So we have done a basic round trip from Lightroom to Photoshop. And now that we've done that, let's go ahead and take another look at Photoshop and see how we can change some of our basic variables, sort of file settings in there. So I'm back here in Lightroom. There is my lovely stacked file. I've gone into Photoshop and I've closed out that copy of the file so that when I come back here and hit Command E again, right, I have the PSD selected, not the underlying raw file. It's going to open it up in Photoshop anew. Now it's not going to do what it did before, which was to make a new copy of that file by default. It's going to pop up with this little dialog box asking me what I want to do. My options are edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. I haven't made any Lightroom adjustments to this file. It's the PSD. You shouldn't be making really Lightroom adjustments to your Photoshop files. If you need to go back and do Lightroom adjustments, right, big global adjustments, white balance adjustments, anything like that, you're better off probably ditching the PSD and working with that raw file again. So not going to do that. Edit a copy. No, I don't need a bunch of copies of this PSD. I just have the one PSD. I want to open that up and continue doing my editing. So edit original is what we're going to choose now and pretty much forever. So edit original, thank you very much. Hit edit. Pops it up here in Photoshop. So a couple of basic Photoshop user interface things. I like to hit the letter F as in Frank on the keyboard. That is going to full screen my image. That makes zooming in and working on stuff a lot easier. You can hit F a second time. That will give you a totally blacked out screen, and if you hit F a third time, it goes back to having it be a little window. So again, you can just cycle through those settings. If you're working on a laptop, you may also like hitting the Tab key. That will hide all of your toolbars and things. That's also good to know when you accidentally hit it and don't know what the hell happened. You can hit Tab again and those things will come back. So here we have my file. I want to I can zoom in on it, right? So I can zoom in by hitting Command plus, Command minus. I can get to viewing it at 100% magnification, so 1 pixel in the image is 1 pixel on my screen. By hitting Command Option 0, I can hit Command 0 to just show as much of it as will fit on my screen. Basic shortcuts that make your life a little easier. The other thing that will make your life easier, if you hold down the space bar, you'll see that my cursor becomes a hand. And that will allow me to slide my image around if I need to look at or edit part of it, or if I've zoomed in a bunch and I need to move around, I can use that hand. That's another reason why having it here in this full screen mode is super helpful, because I can just slide parts of it right off the screen and don't have to worry about it. All right, I'm going to go back Command 0 to have it fit on my screen. So basic adjustments. Stuff that we can do that is pretty straightforward. We can adjust bit depth, right? This is something you're going to need to do for assignment 1. If I go up to image, there are two things that I can do here. There's mode, right? Mode is going to give me RGB, CMYK, all that stuff. We don't want to mess with any of that. But down here, bit depth, right? So I could go from 8 to 16. Right now it's 16. I'm going to leave it at 16. But if I wanted to make it 8, I could make it 8. In fact, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm going to live on the fucking edge. Boom! Looks the same. That difference in 8 and 16, you're not really going to see it on your screen. You are probably not going to notice it in most contexts, but when you're doing a lot of heavy editing, having that extra bit depth is going to be helpful. Another thing we can do, if I go to the Edit menu, big old long menu, come on down here to Convert to Profile. So remember when we brought this into Photoshop, we brought it in as a pro photo RGB, right? So when I do that, right, it tells me my source space, i.e. what I started out in, ProPhoto, and I can choose now a destination space if I so desire, right? I can make it sRGB. That would be our sort of working RGB space that's set up right now. I'll show you where to set that in a second. But let's go ahead and set it to Adobe RGB 1998. You'll see I have a whole bunch of other things there. If you don't have those, don't worry about it. That's fine. You should at least have Adobe RGB and sRGB and ProPhoto. So Adobe RGB 1998. That sounds great. Hit OK. Again, we don't really see much in the way of a change. One important thing to notice when we did that is that, let me go ahead and temporarily make another layer on here. When you convert to profile, if you have layers in your Photoshop file, you will have the option to flatten image to preserve appearance. In general, in this class, we don't want to do that, right? I don't want to flatten my image because I'm going to lose my ability to edit all of those layers that I've worked so hard on. If you don't have any layers in your file, as we didn't until 5 seconds ago when I just made one, that wouldn't be there. Just keep an eye out for it if you are converting with a file later on in the semester, and make sure that that does not get checked. So cancel that. One other Photoshop preferences thing that we need to pay attention to. I'm going to go up here, Photoshop, Edit, Color Settings. Now, a lot of the times this by default is going to come out of the box and be great, but let's go ahead and take a look at it in case it is not. The thing that we're concerned about here is two things: working spaces. So right now my RGB is sRGB. That's okay. I would probably like it to be something a little bit bigger. This comes into play if I make a new document. Right, so if I make a new document, it pops up and it will be in whatever my working space is. And then the other thing down here, color management profiles. So we want to make sure that it says preserve embedded profiles, so that way when we bring in our file from Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever, it is going to keep that profile and not convert it to something without asking us about it. We could, I'm not going to, but we could also come down here to profile mismatches, ask when opening, ask when pasting, and missing profiles, ask when opening. I am not going to select this profile mismatches right now because I have my working space set to Adobe RGB, but Lightroom is constantly opening stuff in ProPhoto. So I'm not going to do that. I am going to check that ask when opening for missing profiles. If I have a file that somehow has lost a profile, I want to know that. I want Photoshop to be like, hey, because that can cause me a lot of problems down the line. So this all seems fine. If you wanted to keep your working space sRGB, if you wanted to make your working space ProPhoto, that would be okay. Just make sure that we have preserve embedded profiles checked, and that if you do make a new document, you're cognizant of what color space it is, right? Remember, we can change it, but you're better off not having to convert down to a smaller color space. So I'll hit OK on that. Okay, so profiles, mode, all that stuff is good. When you're doing that, converting to profile, remember that we're converting to a profile, not assigning a profile. The difference, I always say, it's like if I translate a book, right? If I have Moby Dick and I translate it into English from Finnish, right? Then that's fine, right? I can pick it up, I can read it, it's great. If I just assign a profile, right? That's basically taking my finished copy of Moby Dick and putting a new cover on it that says Moby Dick in English, but not changing any of the interior text. So I go there, I'm expecting it to be in English, I open it up, and it's a bunch of crazy gibberish. Those of you who speak Finnish, I apologize. So we never want to assign profile to an image that has a file profile on it. We always want to convert that profile. All right, other things that we can do here, super basic stuff, we can change the image size. So we can do that by hitting Command-Option-I on our keyboard, or for those of you who are not keyboard-based, I have to figure out where the hell it is. Here we go, Image menu, Image size. Perfect. So this is one of the other things that we're going to frequently do with our files. And I apologize, I'm looking over here at the handout to make sure that I don't miss anything. So right now, it is 18.72 by 12.48, kind of random, and 300 pixels per inch, right? Remember, we set that 300 pixels per inch when it came out of Lightroom, right? And so it had 300 pixels per inch, and it had however many pixels it had. And so that means, right, certain number of pixels per inch, they take up some set number of inches, right? So every 300 pixels, it's a new inch. So that means we end up with 18.72 and 12.48, kind of random. Right now, I'm going to make sure that resample is not checked, so uncheck that. And now if I say, okay, make it just 18 inches, I can make it 18 by 12, and now my resolution is kind of random, right? So I have squozen it down to be a particular dimension, and so there are more of those pixels in each inch. Right? Because resample is unchecked, I'm not adding or throwing away pixels. So if you want, you can make it 180 pixels, or excuse me, 180 inches. So now it is gigantic, right? But it's the same number of pixels, they're just way more spread out. So every inch now only has 31 pixels in it. If I make it 1800 inches, now it has 3 pixels per inch. Again, up here at the top, it is the same number of pixels in my image. I have not changed the image quality in any way. I have simply spread it out over a greater hypothetical distance, right? Because it is on my screen, if I go ahead and hit OK, no change at all, right? If I were to print it out, it would print out gigantic and low quality. But we're looking at it on a screen where we can zoom in, we can zoom out. There is no fixed dimension physically to our screen. So that means that we can make it bigger, smaller. Physically, all it does is change the resolution accordingly. All right. So if we do check that resample box, what happens now? So now, here I'm going to hit cancel on that and come back in. I'm going to set this back to a normal dimension, 18 by 12, fine. Okay, we're back at 18 by 12. Now I'm going to go ahead and check that resample box. Now if I were to change it, it would throw away pixels or make up pixels. If I come over here to width, right, I can now choose a width measured in pixels, right? So my file started out 5,600 pixels. I could say make it 3,000 pixels. Right? So that is taking that 5,600 pixels and throwing away 2,600 of them, right? Getting it down to 3,000 pixels across. If I have resample unchecked, right, I can't do it. Right? It doesn't allow me to edit pixels when I don't have resample checked, right? Because it's going to, if I don't have resample checked, it's not going to add or subtract pixels. If I can't add or subtract them, I can't change the number of them. That's what add or subtract means. So, all right, so I've checked that, 3,000 pixels, not inches, pixels. And this will be actually changing, up here at the top dimensions, 3,000 pixels by 2,000 pixels, actually changing the amount of information that my image has. If I hit OK on that, right, you'll notice that it shifts down a little bit because it is now a file with slightly less information, right? Shrunk down a little bit. but it doesn't look super different, right? The difference between 5600 and 3000 pixels here on my screen, you know, can I tell? No, not really, right? That's still plenty big. If I look at it on this low resolution thing like a screen, I'm not going to be able to notice the difference. If I go back here and change it to 10 pixels though, so tiny. Zoom in, right? That, I think we can safely say, is noticeably different. So now there is a lot less information in this file, and even when you're going from 5600 to 3000, right, that is still happening on some level. So if you were to make a big high quality print, right, if I did that from a 3000 pixel file, I wouldn't be able to make it as big, or I wouldn't be able to have as much detail as I would from a 5600 pixel file. So keep that in mind. That's why we try never to throw away pixel information unless we absolutely have to. So what about increasing the number of pixels? So, right, I can go back in here and write image size, Command Option I, or image menu, image size. Let's bring it back to where we were before, 3000 pixels by 2100 pixels, and hit OK. Again, I'm going to zoom back out, Command O to fit on the screen. So you will see that once I have thrown that information away, I can't really get it back, right? So Photoshop has made up a bunch of pixels to try and make it that larger size, but, right, it was just working from a bunch of big squares. So it's extrapolated, okay, between this red thing and this blue thing, we're going to make sort of a gradient between those. But it has no idea, say, that this is supposed to be a water tower. All it knows is that, hey, that was something that was kind of big and blue. So when we reduce the amount of pixels, reduce the amount of data in our image, we can't really get that back, right? Photoshop can enlarge stuff, right? If you need to make it a little bit bigger, that's probably fine. But any significant change is not going to give you much quality, right? So thinking you can just go ahead and embiggen something ain't gonna work. Okay, so that is editing our file size, and now I'm going to go ahead and look at another way that we can change our image quality, which is compression on saving.